Hey guys, Sevak here with you. I'm a tutor and a coach. So I'm cross-posting this lesson to diverse groups and pages that I manage on Facebook. If you're seeing this on some of those pages, you should check out English for Growth and in Armenian, Angleren Achi Hamar. That page of mine if you're interested, especially in improving your English. Okay, so I'm also sharing this lesson to some pages for English teachers, inviting teachers to benefit from these lessons as well. You might use this material for your students as well. This will help them get some collect some vocab on topics related to especially politics and philosophy. Okay, so the third lesson is about the disadvantages of collectivist politics. So last time we looked carefully into lots of terms. We classified politics, and the biggest spectrum we picked for ourselves was like individualist politics and collectivist politics. Okay, so this course again is crafted by someone like me who is an individualist, who's an objectivist. So the lesson is going to be on the disadvantages of collectivism. In case if you're a pro-collectivist type of person, a nationalist or a socialist, a Marxist, you're welcome to point out the advantages of collectivist politics in the comments section, okay? So the first and the biggest problem, apropos means about, yeah? So apropos collectivist politics is that the individual is always going to be sacrificed for the sake of whatever. For the sake of the nation, for the sake of the society, for the sake of communism, for the sake of our glorious past, for the sake of our grandfathers, etc., etc., etc. So, as this is an English lesson, let me also give you those words like apropos. It's actually a French word, apropos, yeah, but in English we just write it like this, apropos together, means about or regarding, yeah. Also, apropos, it's an O-S, yeah. And lots of people have an issue with this word, etc., etc. This is read as etc. This word means like and so on, yeah, and so on, and so on, and so on. So this term comes from Latin, et cetera, yeah. This is why we read it with T, not with an X. Some people, they just say etc., which is wrong, etc. So etc. or etc. both are fine. Okay, so the individual, let's have our little individual. This is you and this is me. But in collectivist politics, like the individual is always sacrificed. It's okay to sacrifice me, it's okay to sacrifice you for the sake of our nation, our grandfather's memory, our glorious past, blah, 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 for the sake of socialism, Marxism, etc., etc. So you should feel little, you should pay your taxes whether you want it or not, right? So you should, obey. Yeah, the individual should obey the mob. Always. The individual is sacrificed. And this is the biggest philosophical and ethical, and I would say political problem of any collectivist uh, movement. In USSR, for instance, there was this concept of uh, the dictatorship of the proletariat. So the dictatorship of the working of the working masses. It's even wrong to use the term individual when we speak of collectivism, right? So the dictatorship of the proletariat, it required you, the individual, to work hard, to volunteer, to pay not only taxes but also like giveaways or giving your money away to for the sake of aviation, for the sake of the villagers who needed education, and it was voluntary, like, but it was compulsory, right? You had to do that. So compulsory is the opposite of voluntary. Voluntary, you do it if you want it to do. If you want to do it, yeah, if you want it, you do it. Compulsory is you have to do it, whether you want it or not. You must do it. That's the term compulsory. Okay. And as I'm from the Republic of Armenia, I'm going to bring lots of examples from our own past. Like currently, we have our third republic. We had 3 republics. This is the third one. And the Third Republic of Armenia is a very nationalist and collectivist project. Like the anthem, which glorifies the death for the freedom of the country, and like we were always told that you have to sacrifice for your family, for your community, for your country, etc., etc. So, for instance, Armenians will know this name, Vazgen Sargsyan. The guy has also the nickname of Sparapet, like commander or whatever. So, for instance, people tell about Vazgen Sargsyan, who is treated as a hero in the Republic of Armenia, in the Third Nationalist Republic of Armenia, that he was a hero. And also they say that when Vazgen saw you in the army running away or not obeying the rules, he would shoot you. He would shoot you on your forehead when you were running away from your back. So I can't say how much of this is true, but there are people who tell about this, and some of them say it with pride, like, "Oh, he was such a strong leader; he would kill if you didn't obey him." So, if you're a collectivist, this is a totally normal behavior. Like, when we see Lukashenko, Putin, or any dictator who is okay, sacrificing hundreds and thousands of people for the sake of great Russia or whatever. Yeah. So this is the basic issue. And in Armenia, we had the same problem, like Vazgen Sargsyan, lots of collectivists. They were okay, they were fine, with sacrificing people. So we had lots of victims during the first Nagorno-Karabakh war in 90s. And they were like, well, we did it for our lands, we did it for our country, so that's fine. So from the perspective of an individualist and an objectivist, that's not okay. It's not okay. I don't want to be killed, right? I don't want to live by some rules over which I have no say, like how much should I pay, like taxes, how much taxes should I pay, etc., etc. Okay. So the individual is not a value at all in collectivist worldviews. Like, you are zero, you are a not or none or nothing. Note, Nought, note or nothing. You're nothing. Huh? So that's a huge issue. So it's okay, to kill people. And for instance, we had this Nagorno-Karabakh issue, which is not fully solved until now for 30 years. it has been going on. Like we've lost about 1 million individuals from the Republic of Armenia. If you look at the census of like how many people lived in Armenia in 1988 and how many people live in Armenia in 2022, you'll see a huge difference. And still the numbers are not really trustworthy because the current government sees himself as the predecessor, as the inheritor of the previous government. Nikol Pashinyan, our current prime minister, didn't remove lots of former officials. So this is why, for me, as an individual, as a citizen, who knows like how things were governed during the past 30 years by Republicans. Yeah, Republicans are quite similar in Armenia to those of the US. By Republicans, by Dashnaks. Dashnaks are a very ultra-nationalist group. So yeah, I can't even trust those numbers, which show that there was a huge, there were huge waves of emigration from Armenia. Yes, emigration with an E is when people leave the country. Immigration with an I-M, immigration is when they get in. So there was a huge wave of emigration from Armenia, right? And actually, there's another problem. What is a society? Doesn't any society consist of lots of individuals, etc., etc.? So, if you are fine with sacrificing the individual, like we need to get 500 people killed so that we get back the lands of our ancestors, isn't it okay to sacrifice the society as a whole for the sake of your own wisdom because you're a wise governor? This society cannot exist without you, just like Stalin, Lenin, Lukashenko think of themselves, right? So if you're okay with sacrificing an individual, what hinders you, what stops you from, sacrificing your own, society as a whole? And this guy, Vasgen Sargsyan, for instance, he spoke of, in Armenian, the term is Mahapart. Like Mah is death, Part is Partvat, like you have to die. You have no choice in it. Like you accept that it's like, this Japanese kamikaze. So Mahapart is like an suicidal person who is going to kill himself for the sake of the country. So this guy, who is treated as a hero, Vasgen Sargsyan, on the TV in the 90s, he said, give me 500 suicidal guys. This is what I ask. I don't ask of soldiers, I ask of 500 suicidal guys. So this is what they are okay with, yeah? And well, this is what we see, like Armenia, for instance, lost about 1 million and probably even more. There were a few 100,000 Azerbaijani Armenian citizens, like ethnically Azerbaijanis. They lived in the Republic of Armenia, all around the country. So they are gone. And lots of Armenians ran away from this nationalistic heaven, well, hell, in its actuality. So this collectivist project was a disaster from my perspective as an individualist. Okay. All right. Next, here's another problem. Like the small group decides what is right, what is good, and that's it. Like I'm a collectivist, I'm a nationalist, for instance. I know what's good for my country, and I'm just doing that. I don't care about your opinion, especially if I'm elected. So this is the problem, of politics in general. This is why, the European Union came up with an interesting formula. The formula is majority rule, minority rights. Because if the majority, even if the majority is left, to its own whim, they can decide like to execute this or that minority. And we see lots of problems with LGBT rights, with Muslim minorities in Christian countries, and vice versa. Like the contrary is true for other minorities living in Muslim countries. So this is a problem. On the other hand, a minority thinks, like the government thinks, that they know what's best for the people. And, if you're into politics, it's very easy to spot this interesting tendency or trend that the longer the government rules, the lower its support gets. Like the support for the government, even the elected one, gets lower and lower and lower. This is true with Nikol Pashinyan in Armenia. This is true with Mr. Emmanuel Macron in France, right? So this is why in a collectivist society, when everything is ruled by this collectivist mindset, you always end up with having a small group of people who speak, on behalf of a majority, but they don't even represent the majority often that elected them. So it's a problem. And this is one of the problems of any collectivist type of governance and politics. This is true not only for nationalists, but also for liberals like Macron or socialists, which might be fine with LGBT rights, etc., but they can tax people so heavily that people would just run away. This happened to Sweden. We'll go into that much deeper. So collectivism itself has this intrinsic problem. Also, even democracy. So the term demos means people, yeah? You could think of a crowd, yeah? So demos, kratos, those two Greek words, democracy, is the rule of the crowd or of the people, yeah, as a whole. Not just one single crowd, but the people itself. So, democratically, we can vote for instance, banning left-handers, taking any state position, or banning gay people, from becoming teachers in public schools. We can do that, and that will be quite democratic. Actually, Socrates was voted, like the life of Socrates was voted by the citizens of ancient Athens, and they voted to execute him. So the great philosopher was executed by the majority decision. So this is where we need to distinguish between a democracy, for instance, and a republic. And this is why documents like, say, the Bill of Rights, for instance, yeah? Some countries have their own Bill of Rights, which stands beyond, above any leader and any political group. This is why these type of documents are important in the long run to stop people from becoming Putin's and Lukashenko's. And we've just seen what Trump did to the US, right? So if Trump is re-elected, I won't be surprised if the US starts wars with Canada and with Mexico, just as Putin does with Ukraine, just as Lukashenko tells the world that Poland is the enemy, tells his people that Poland is the enemy. So that's another problem. Those who speak on behalf of the majority don't normally represent that majority, especially as time goes by. Like their support rates lower. So that's an interesting problem of any democracy. So this is why, like a Bill of Rights, a constitution, if it really works, yeah, these kinds of mechanisms are even beyond uh, democracy, or else, like democratically, we can elect, Putin as a Tsar, or the Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan was elected as the head of this Security Council. I don't know how it's called officially, but according to the Constitution, this is how they actually molest, Constitution and those kind of important documents. He should have been the only head of this Security Council as long as he lived. So that's crazy, but this is how the Constitution was twisted. Yeah. So this is what they do in collectivist regimes and in authoritarian and totalitarian regimes. So the next big issue is the lack of any real value system. Let me explain this, okay? For instance, is it okay to kill? Well, in Christianity, and this is interesting because in Christian societies, these conservatives represent themselves, depict themselves as the keepers of Christian traditional values. Like Putin is pro-Christian, blah, 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 blah. So is it okay to kill? Christianity says, thou shalt not kill. Yeah, you shall not kill. Killing isn't okay. What about killing your enemies for the sake of your motherland? Is it okay? Well, obviously it is. Like Americans killed people in Vietnam for America, right? Life is not a real value. It's okay to kill. Also, well, okay, it's okay to kill your enemies. Like inside the country, outside the country, it's okay to catch them, to neutralize them, to kill the terrorists. What about killing the internal enemies? Is it okay or not? In Armenian, we have a very xenophobic and a very racist term used by nationalists, Dashnaks, Republicans. In Armenian, it sounds like Netkin Turk, literally the inner Turk. They speak of the inner Turk. This is the ideology of Garagin Najde, a crazy Hitler collaborationist who ran away from Armenia and he ran to Germany. He lived in Berlin in about mid-40s. So he's a real Nazi collaborator. He's treated as a hero by Armenian collectivists. We have a Republic Square named after Karagin Najde. We have a subway station named after Karagin Najde. And it's crazy to me as an objectivist, as an individualist. It's crazy, right? So this term was coined by Garagin Najde, the term of, about inner Turk. The idea is that even among Armenians, there are some Armenians who are not real Armenians, yeah? Un-Armenian Armenians, and it's okay to catch them, it's okay to neutralize them, to send them away from the country, to kill them physically. So yes, from the perspective of collectivists, it's quite alright to kill not only thy external enemies, but also thy or your inner enemies, to clean up your nation, yeah, from inner traitors. So, for instance, life is not a value, and you can expect anything from collectivists in that respect, right? Is it okay to torture people if you are not torturing them for your own pleasure, but for the sake of your country? Maybe they have some information. You need to extract this information from them? Is it okay to torture them for that? Well, obviously, for lots of people, it's quite all right. So when they speak of values like family, they like enjoy speaking, about family values. Those conservatives, those collectivists. In Armenia, it was so obvious that when they speak of family values, they only mean their own families. Uh, like we have Northern Avenue. Like this Northern Avenue is constructed in Armenia, and lots of families suffered because of that. People were forced out, like their property was taken from them. Some of those people didn't even get any compensation. The second president of Armenia, Robert Kocharyan, whom we call Rob, to it's sort of derogatory because he had these personality issues. He wanted huge respect for himself. So me too. I enjoy calling him Rob instead of Robert. Yeah. Um, he forced people out. He was like, well, for the sake of the country, uh, for the state interests, it's okay to sacrifice those families. And we had lots of corruption everywhere when the given family or the member of the ruling family ruled. He had a monopoly over importing mobile phones in Armenia in 20,000s. Yes, in by the beginning of the 20th century, and it was okay. This was their family value thing. So they don't really care about families, they care about their families, and it's obvious when you look at them very closely. So even when they speak of family values, that's a lie, because no, family is not a value. It's okay to tear apart, the families of other people. To jail, for instance, in Armenia, we had this. For instance, there was a peacemaker, Georgi Vanyan. He passed away recently, a few months ago. They persecuted like representatives of the national security of the like Sargsyan used to rule Armenia back then. So for he was a Republican, and for Republicans, it was okay to send national security officers to Georgi Vanyan's family and to terrorize those people. They say that his brother was contacted by national security representatives, and they said, don't support your brother. Don't allow him to even live in your apartment, which Georgi used to do because he was denied jobs. All the opportunities were shut down for him. So family is not a value, and we have seen that in Armenia, and we've seen that we see that all the time, like in Putin's Russia when they terrorize the family members of opposition leaders or people who oppose the regime. Yeah, that's quite all right. Hmm? So no, they are lying. They don't have any values. Value systems in collectivism, from my perspective, are not possible. What other values can you think of? Just write down in the comments. We can discuss that, and we'll see whether they have any values, whether a value system is possible in a collectivist politics, in collectivist politics at all or not. Okay. So actually, I'm going to mention one value that collectivism is quite happy with: death. Death is the ultimate value in objectivist politics. Like, you should die for your country. Yeah, the Armenian anthem, it sings like by the end of the anthem, we have the lyrics say, the text says, death is the same for everyone. The human being dies only once. Praise to the one who dies for the freedom. they mean for the freedom of his nation. So death is praised. In Armenian, we even have a very funny saying, "Genameri arisirem." Die first, then I will love you. This is about the cult of death. Uh, Dead soldiers are called heroes. When you die, you get into the ranks of the heroes almost automatically. You're a soldier, you were killed. They don't call it, killing. They call it heroization. Yeah, making people into heroes, which is killing people. Yeah. So death is quite all right. You should be okay to sacrifice yourself up to the point of physically killing yourself for the sake of your nation, state, country, society, blah blah blah. Hmm? Right. Here's another problem, a big one. Politics gets identified with power and with governance. We should ask ourselves: is doing politics about simply governing? Is doing politics just about having power? Because from the perspective of collectivists, yes, it is. In some dictionaries, when I was just going through some literature, I would see the term power in the definitions of politics, or they'd say, for instance, that politics is about getting power, for instance, by election and imposing whatever you want. This is, of course, practiced by lots of governments. However, there are some alternatives. Objectivism, lots of forms of anarchism or anarchy, libertarianism, etc., etc. Classically, if we try to depict that, okay, let me show that on the whiteboard. If we try to depict that, lots of people think of politics as a vertical line. So you have some hierarchy. On top, you have someone or a group of people who are considered to be super important. Yeah. Then there is maybe some branching, like 2 or 3 lower systems, and then further and further it goes down, blah 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 blah. And sometimes you can have multiple lower circles, etc., etc. So this is the classical perception of politics and governance. I am elected as the prime minister, or I'm appointed a prime minister. I'm elected to be a member of parliament. This means I get power and I can do whatever I want, right? Are we satisfied with this kind of political system? Is it all right? For lots of us, no, we're not. And no, it's not all right. Let me give you a very fresh example from Armenia again. So we have the president of the parliament, Alen Simonyan, the current president. One day he was walking across the parliament, and then a worker, like some of those security guys, came in, and he started collecting the chairs that were left on the hall for the journalists. So why? It turned out that Alen Simonyan didn't like how people behaved when he walked, down the hall. He, wanted some type of respect from those people. So the Alen wanted this kind of Kazakh, yeah, Kazaki type of respect for his own persona. Like, bow down to me or sit straight when I walk. You shouldn't have your hands crossed or legs crossed or whatever. This is crazy, yeah? And this gets on people's, minds. Like, I have power, I have more power than you, and I should be worshipped. I should be treated differently than I used to be treated by you. Huh? That's a political problem. That's also a psychological problem, according to me. I'll speak about this phenomenon in one of my lessons. I'll share my theory about why it's happening, why people change when they are elected. Okay, so for now, I'm just mentioning this problem, which is very obvious in collectivist politics, especially that politics gets identified with power and governance. And of course, politics is way bigger than that. I can do politics without even having to have someone over me. Yeah. On the first lesson, in the first lesson, I mentioned that I gave an example of what politics is, and even if we want to build road, yes, or a kindergarten, we want to improve our community, our polis, yeah, if we take the root politics, polis, our polis or our community, that's also politics, right? Okay, that's it. And here's another huge problem. When politics gets identified with power and governance, we get this special breed of politicians, this special type of politicians, which start thinking that they are the Messiah. They need to save the world or save their own nation. Yeah? This Messiah complex in politics is born from this, from the identification of politics with government, with power and governance. I mean, yeah. And people with this Messiah complex turn into dictators pretty fast. Okay? So yeah, this is, according to me, this is how it's happening, like how dictators are born. It's a political process, it's a psychological process, and it's a logical fallacy, like when one thing is identified with another thing, falsely identified with it. Yeah, that's it. I will cover also the laws of logic in this course. Right? Here's a funny example. In New Zealand, they want to forbid everyone who is born after 2008. They want to bar them from smoking. Like, you shouldn't have the right to smoke if you are born after 2008. Why the individual shouldn't have this ability to choose themselves, whether they want to smoke or not. Well, when you look at it, from the first look, if you just look at it very superficially, it can be, oh, that's a nice idea, that's so humane, it will be so helpful to those people, to the planet, blah blah blah. But from the perspective of an objectivist, of an individualist, of someone who values their own freedom, for me it's a problem. I normally don't smoke, but I'm not against smoking, and definitely I don't want, any law forbidding people to smoke at all, right? And recently in Armenia, there is a new law that is effective, or that will be effective in a month or in a couple of months, barring people from smoking in public areas, in restaurants, in pubs, in bars. So again, to me, that's a problem. Why can't the given bar decide on its own whether it allows people to smoke inside or not? Why can't we have hybrid like places with parts, like with rooms for smokers and with some rooms for non-smokers, etc., etc.? So this is a problem, right? In So this example, for instance, shows that in a collectivist system, doesn't matter a right-wing collectivist system, conservative one, or a left-wing collectivist system, a very socialist, Marxist type of system, you do not have power or control even on your mind and body. The system will decide whether you can smoke or not. The system will decide whether you have the right to abortion or not. The system will sometimes even decide whether you can have sex with the individual of your own biological sex or not, right? And that's a huge issue for, from the perspective of humanism and individualism and objectivism, right? So collectivists are like, you should, they train you, for instance, to get excited when you hear the specific anthem. Your hands won't shake when you hear the Georgian anthem, like from the Republic of Georgia, but you should shake, you should get some tears, and maybe sexually aroused if you hear the anthem of America, if you're American, the anthem of Armenia, if you're Armenian, etc., etc., etc. So they work on your mind, right? Especially if you look at our textbooks, like even the textbook of, the subject of literature, it's so full of crap. It's so full of, let's call it patriotic crap, like, someone sent me the textbook that their kid has to use in a public school in Armenia. It's about fourth or fifth grade, maybe even a bit lower. That's so ugly. They talk of blood, like your blood and the blood of your country is the same, and they are, brainwashing small kids into that. It's a crime from the perspective, of an individualist, of a humanist. It's a crime. The kid, when he grows up, or she, like the kid, may decide on their own whether they want to sacrifice their blood, whether they want to think of their body, their individual body, and their government or country as one or not at all. Okay. So this given anthem is yours, this given flag is yours. You should cry when you see those colors. You should hate this other flag, like those Dashnak guys. They burn the flag of Turkey in the downtown of the capital city of Armenia, Yerevan, every year. 21st century. Talk of xenophobia. They do it. Okay, that's it. That's it. Of course, we should speak of religion as the predecessor and, the system of thought which normalized this type of extreme control over people's bodies and minds, right? Right. So the perspective and the initiative of the individual is thrown away in collectivist systems as something which is not interesting, which is not useful, which can hinder, right? If you're a free thinker, if you don't think that you should sacrifice yourself happily, When your prime minister tells you so, you're an enemy, you're a hindrance, and you may influence others badly. Hmm? So, from the perspective of collectivism, a free thinker is always a threat. And this is, why we have extreme obsession with George Soros, with Bill Gates, with the Masons and Freemasonry in those conservative systems, like in Russia, in Armenia, everywhere. Lots of, conservative people enjoy talking about Soros, Freemasonry, as something negative, as the enemies, blah 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 blah. Right? So I'll just mention quickly that if you look into the history of Armenia, especially the last 150 years of Armenian history, you will see that this expansionalist and mono-ethnic nationalistic experiment was a disaster. So here's another term. Let me write this down on the blackboard. Okay. The Greek prefix mono, or monos, means alone. Yeah? Alone, one, yeah? So mono-ethnic. The word explains itself. Yeah? So there's only place for one ethnicity. For instance, Russia only for Russians. And when they say Russian, they mean white Slavic guys, yes, with blonde hair and blue eyes, guys and girls. Or Armenia for Armenians. And when they mention Armenian, they mean a certain type of guy, a certain type of person, like a black Armenian, that's a nonsense. Black Russian, that's a nonsense from the perspective of monoethnicity or monoethnic nationalism or collectivism, right? So Armenia got sick, I'd say, with this disease of monoethnic romanticism, starting from maybe the middle of the 19th century. We had some nationalist writers, Rafi, I think Nalbandian was sort of nationalist as well. They would talk about the need of independence and Armenia for Armenians, and that's it. We can't live, along with Turks, with Kurds. We need to have our own independence, and the same disease hit us again by mid 80s when Armenians started, talking about the impossibility of living peacefully with Azerbaijanis, and hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijanis just disappeared, sort of, from Armenia. And lots of Armenians, of course, about 500,000 Armenians disappeared from Azerbaijan. Some of them were slaughtered, others had to run away, just as the Azerbaijanis of Armenia and the Azerbaijanis of Nagorno-Karabakh, right? So if you look carefully, it resulted in genocides, like this mono-ethnic nationalism resulted in genocides and in poverty and in monopolization of everything and in oligarchy. Especially like these last 30 years that Armenia had to go through, it was terribly hellish. Like about 1 million people ran away, and the population was 3.5 million by 1988, and we lost about 1 million people, maybe more. I can't trust even those numbers now because it's the same regime with the same, value system. That death is okay, sacrificing the individual is okay, uh, hating on Turks is okay. This same mindset goes on and on. Okay, fascism, of course, is another collectivist system, and you can go and study like what fascism resulted in, what was the end of Hitler's project. It's fun when there are some guys who worship Hitler, and they just kind of can't see what happened to Hitler, how it all ended. If you worship the guy, you should just look carefully at his whole biography and what it resulted in. All right? Socialism is yet another system which had very terrible consequences. USSR collapsed. It is no more. It doesn't exist. The Mao of China, they sacrificed lots of people. There at some point there was this cultural revolution where they would burn ancient Chinese textbooks and scripts, and they would kill priests. They would kill, they say, sometimes they would even kill teachers. And we had Pol Pot in Cambodia. We had those guys in Latin America, right? Or Franco in Spain, etc., etc. If you look carefully into those systems, you can just see how terrible they were. Also, I'm going to mention, I'll leave the title in the comments right now. There's a nice book by Ayn Rand. It's called We the Living. We the Living. It's about, life in USSR. Ayn Rand. Those who speak Russian, I'm giving you the title in Russian as well. Мы живые. Живые. The audiobooks are available. The Russian one is available on Google, not on Facebook, not on YouTube. Okay, Мы живые, Ayn Rand. So you can read the book, you can listen to the audiobook. She was there. Ayn Rand was born in Tsarist Russia. She witnessed this communist and Bolshevik revolution as a kid, as a teenager, and she was able to escape, to run away from this communist project before Stalin closed the USSR, before there was this so-called Iron Curtain that fell between Europe and USSR, right? So she saw it all. She's an insider, right? So you have terrible, terrible details in the book, how people suffered, how people died from malnutrition, how people were caught as traitors, how they were left out of the system if they didn't agree to this voluntary, so-called voluntary service in the name of the people, in the name of the proletariat, the working classes, etc., etc. So I strongly recommend the book. Yeah, okay. Here's another thing. I'm almost done, okay? I have two main points to share with you for this lesson, and that's it. So there's this institutionalization of duty and sin or obligation. You have duty. Duty is like you have this mortgage you have to pay off. You took money from someone and you have to give him away. This is what duty means. You have to do it whether you want it or not. This is your duty, and that's it. So this crazy concept of duty cannot exist without this sense of guilt, that I am guilty. It's like you should be grateful that you are born into this unto this society or in this country, you should be grateful that this country didn't kill you, that you are able to walk and drink and breathe. Of course, that's nonsense from the perspective of an individualist. Like, it doesn't really matter whether the country I'm born in is called the US or France or Turkey or whatever. If I'm born as an individual, as a human being, as a living creature, I can breathe, I can work. It's my right to use my brain, my mind, and teach myself or learn from others, how to write, how to speak, etc., etc. This country, this government has nothing to do with that. It's my inborn ability to learn. This institutes of duty is kind of fucked up, I'd say. And of course, collectivism strongly depends on that, and hence this indoctrination of the citizens with this idea of duty. You have to do it whether you want it or not. Of course, there is no such thing from the perspective of an individualist, of a rationally thinking person. You don't have to do anything. If you don't like the country, you can even leave that country. So you're not a slave, you are not obliged to do anything. You can if you want to. If you like this society, especially if it's a free society, like a European society, a Canadian society, which is very tolerant, open-minded, you appreciate the fact that you can parade as a gay person, that you can speak your own language, dance your own dances, etc. Of course, you can defend that system, but you choose to do it on your own, right? So it's not a duty, it's a choice. Especially, you will be better at doing it if it's your own conscious choice instead of you have to do that. Yeah. All right. In Armenia, we have this crazy trend that it existed also in USSR, when the prisoners of war, people who were taken hostage, from the other side, are blamed. Unfortunately, our prime minister did that. This Alen Simonian guy did that. They blame the prisoners of war. They say it's their fault. They shouldn't have gotten into the hands of the enemies. So they are like, well, kill yourself, spill your own blood. But if you you fall into the hands of the enemy, you're a bad patriot. You're a bad Armenian. Of course, that's insane. And again, this is about the cult of death. Like, they worship death. They hate a living person. They hate it when an Armenian person comes back from, this slavery situation from Azerbaijan, for instance. They regularly they arrest those guys, and they are like, "Why did you fall, into the hands of the enemy? You're bad." In USSR, they used to send the prisoners of war who were, hostages of Germans, to Siberia. They didn't have life, and that's insane, especially from the perspective of an individualist. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's insane. So the individual is to blame always. Something good happens, oh, praise God or praise the government. Yeah, we're good. Something bad happened, you, the individual, it's your fault. You didn't pay enough taxes. You were a bad patriot. This is how collectivism works. Often, it's the individual who's blamed. Okay, final note. Collectivism requires you to switch off your mind and your brain, to refuse even the reflex of self of of survival. Yeah, it's like, isn't it normal if I am surrounded by enemies, I should strive for, remaining whole, alive, conscious, without losing a limb, without spilling my own blood, especially. Well, collectivism is like, no, you should kill yourself, you should kill the enemies, you shouldn't fall, in the hands of the enemy. So collectivism requires, or this patriotism, nationalism requires you to switch off your mind and brain. That's crazy. You should be ready to die and to kill. Of course, the good soldier, like especially the one who dies, if you just die, that's not much of a good service. If you kill lots of enemies before you kill yourself, oh, you're great. So when they speak of killing yourself, they speak of killing others as well. It's the other side of the same coin, right? So mind, rational, you know, any normal mental activity is bad from the perspective of collectivism. It can be right-wing collectivism where it's much more obvious. It can be left-wing collectivism as well, and we'll look, into like what happened in Sweden, for instance, yeah, which is often praised as a very good example of collectivism, of socialism. uh, Feelings matter in collectivism. They want you to be not a Homo sapiens sapiens. Sapiens, it's a Latin term meaning thinking. Yeah, a thinking human. Sapiens. I hope I'm getting it correctly. Like, yeah, I think yes by the end. So Homo sapiens means thinking, the one who knows how to think. In some languages, say in French, we have savoir, yeah, to know or knowledge, saber in Spanish. So sapiens is about this ability to think, yeah. So thinking is bad for collectivists. Are to be emotions are to replace thinking. Like whenever we switch on this music, you should cry. It's the anthem of your country. Whenever we show you the flag, you need to rip off your shirt and kill people for the sake of this flag or for the sake of this country. Like emotions, emotions, emotions. Emotions are used in a very destructive way, and it's a process of just zombifying you, of creating a zombie type of being who doesn't care about his own life, who doesn't care about rational thinking, about humanism, who is ready to kill and do whatever the fatherland or a group of men, normally speaking on behalf of the fatherland, ask you to do. This is it. See you next time.